Hi guys, how are you all today evening? Good evening. Today we shall talk about the stage after the place where a living entity has just entered the spiritual world after living in the goodness mode for ages. In this stage, the living entity who has just entered the spiritual world becomes first a renunciant or a sannyasi, and then he or she becomes a muni. A muni is someone who has the habit of meditating through his or her third eye into the universe within. When this becomes a habit with that particular living entity, he or she automatically becomes self contained and likes to be addicted to or to be blissfully living in that particular universe within without getting any active or passive part in the material world outside. In other words, this particular living entity becomes a transcendental person, or he or she falls into a trance wherein this particular living entity likes to live in the universe within himself or herself. Here, this particular living entity, as a muni, takes and obeys vibrations from his or her etheric world, astral mind, and causal intelligence only. Now, when a person lives in the muni stage for time immemorial, he or she progresses further and becomes something in a place where the future goal of this particular living entity branches out into two different directions. In one direction, this living entity who is contemplative and who is in search of Brahman becomes a saint, a sage, a monk, a rishi, a maharishi, a godman, etc. These are stages of a living entity. Godman includes God woman also. In many ways, a living entity who may be a male maharishi before can become a god woman later, and a female maharshi can become a god man in his or her next birth. The ultimate aim is to search Brahman, self-realization, liberation, deliverance, and ultimately to go back to Godhead. There is another way towards the same goal. It is that of a servant of God. That is, when a person starts as a celestial being an angel, a Vidyadhara, or a person who wants to progress in the path of knowledge, a Gandharva, a person who is known for his or her beauty and talent in music and other arts, and then from there he or she proceeds towards demigod and then reaches God automatically. But in both cases, the living entities don't want to progress further until they have lived all their lives and births in a particular stage. That means a saint will remain a saint up to a saturation point, after which he or she will become a rishi, and so on. From rishi to maharishi, maharishi to god man or god woman, and so on. They are not in a hurry because the divine births are very blissful and make the living entity enjoy life as a spiritual soul in those divine births. Similarly, a celestial being will be very happy living in that shape or form till he or she becomes an angel and then a demigod and so on. The ultimate aim is to realize one's self. Whereas in one case, a person wants to remain a servant of God and thus feel and enjoy the bliss of being with God. In the other, he or she becomes contemplative and tries to keep or form his own opinions or ideas about God. Both ways, the person is divine and loves his or her position in wherever he or she finds himself or herself in the spiritual divine world. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk about this subject. If you really feel that I am making sense, kindly subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon so that I can keep informing you of my other videos. Please pardon me for any spell error or mistake in my appearance, spelling, grammar, diction, etc. because when I am talking to you on spiritual and material matters, I cannot concentrate on these frivolous things. Before we end, I would like you all to try to enter this divine spiritual world by living a material world of the mode of goodness to such an extent that you have stopped enjoying this material world and you enter the spiritual world as a renunciant and progress further. Thank you. Till we meet in my next video, it is good night from TSV Raghavan.